Love is one of the most important aspects of human beings. It is a feeling of affection and attraction that can lead to feelings of happiness and well-being. It is often considered the most important value in a person's life, and the greatest of human achievements. In this report I aim to explore whether love is overall more beneficial for self-growth or rather detrimental to self-growth. To help understand this inquiry, I will be discussing 4 texts: William Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra, 1606, Ninja Theory's video game Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, 2017, Baz Luhrmann's film The Great Gatsby, 2013, and George Lucas' film Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, 2005. These 4 texts all display great instances of love facilitating personal growth, as well as other things, within the main characters. The idea that love can provide opportunity for self-growth is shown in the video game Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice as well as the play Antony and Cleopatra. Throughout Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, Senua suffers from psychosis and is plagued by voices in her head as well as detailed flashbacks of her past trauma. The game shows the idea when Senua, seeking to revive her lover by venturing into what she believes is the mythic underworld Hell, reaches Hela. Senua bargains with her for the release of Dillion's soul. Hela defeats Senua and drops Dillion's head into the abyss. The camera follows his head before panning back up and shows Senua standing in Hela's place while Hela lies dead where Senua was previously. It is then clear that Senua's journey was an extended psychotic episode induced by her grief after losing Dillion. Releasing Dillion's head represents Senua finally letting go of Dillion and coming to terms with her grief and internal suffering by using Hela to represent her inner conflict. In the end, it was the love between Dillion and Senua that allowed Senua to grow as a person and move on with her life rather than constantly battling herself. This idea makes sense because Dillion was the one who helped Senua let go of her father and the things he did to cure her. Dillion was also responsible for convincing Senua not to take her own life to purge her curse. Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice shows that letting go of an unhealthy love while also remembering the love previously had can allow for self-growth. Moreover, towards the end of Antony and Cleopatra, a historical tragedy about the love affair between the 2 powerful leaders, Antony is no longer seen as a noble warrior but rather as a man overpowered by a woman. Shakespeare uses imagery and juxtaposition to illustrate the thought that even after suffering from a loss of honor, love can allow for self-growth which in turn causes honor to be shown once more. After being told Cleopatra took her own life, Antony realized that, with his sword courted the world, lacked the courage of a woman. Shakespeare uses imagery to firstly paint the picture of the once great conqueror Antony was before using juxtaposition to compare this with Antony now, unable to do the honorable thing Cleopatra has done in taking her life. By committing suicide, Cleopatra is standing up to Caesar and sending the message that nobody can conquer her. It is this belief that Cleopatra is dead that leads Antony to do what I believe is an honorable act in taking his own life, as he is not allowing Caesar to have the satisfaction of taking his life. Similarly, I believe letting go of Dillion is an act caused by love because unlike everyone else around Senua, Dillion saw her for who she was rather than her mental illness. Through this, the author-director's purpose was to show that love has the potential to create a better person who can find the best parts of their lives before love corrupted them and merge it with the things they find through love. Shakespeare showed Antony accepting his blinding and possibly unhealthy love for Cleopatra and uniting that with the noble man he was. Ninja Theory showed Senua accepting her unhealthy love for Dillion and uniting that with the love Dillion once gave her. Therefore we can gather from this connection that in our current society, acceptance of something like a blinding love can allow for growth as a person only if we do not completely lose track of everything we were before being overwhelmed by love. However, it occurred to me that the love that blinded Mark Antony may have actually been more cumulatively destructive for him even though he grew as a person because of it. This thought made me consider the idea that love can be destructive. The idea that love can be destructive is something rarely discussed in modern media, but can be seen in The Great Gatsby as well as Antony and Cleopatra. In the latter, we see Mark Antony lose his reputation as a ruthless, godlike leader because of how he blindly follows Cleopatra. Even Antony becomes aware of how destructive his love is when he tells Cleopatra that his heart was to thy rudder tied by the strings. This quote contains a clever use of metaphor because it shows that Antony was almost tethered to Cleopatra and dragged along against his will when he abandoned his men to flee with her in the Battle of Actium. The result of this was that Antony's people, and even Antony himself, no longer had faith and respect for their leader. While this text does display destructive love, it has to be noted that the love between Antony and Cleopatra is only destructive when it is followed blindly. Additionally, in The Great Gatsby, a similar idea is shown in a very different situation where the only similarity present is love. Jay Gatsby, who has been madly in love with Daisy for years, asks her to tell Tom, her husband, that she does not love him. After Daisy refuses and a fight breaks out, Daisy realizes that the two sides of her life cannot clash. Gatsby, however, still has the idea in his head that she is in love with him. In reality, Daisy's love for Gatsby is similar to Cleopatra's love for Antony in the sense that she only loves Gatsby when it is convenient for her. Yet both Antony and Gatsby believed they had found women who could do no wrong and were the love of their lives. This mismatched understanding of love eventually leads to Daisy abandoning Gatsby. Meanwhile, Gatsby continues to maintain his belief that Daisy is in love with him when he assures Nick, his best friend, that Daisy's going to call, we'll make plans to go away together. This example reinforces the idea that being blinded by love can be destructive. Daisy cuts ties with Gatsby to run away from the consequences of her actions, running over a woman and blaming it on Gatsby, and this is a clear destruction of their relationship. When Gatsby is murdered later on, he dies without his reputation as a wealthy Oxford man who throws lavish parties. Rather, he dies as a murderer and an unfaithful scoundrel. Another destruction of reputation that is very similar to that of Mark Antony, as both were caused by blind love. This example also makes me consider that blind love can be destructive in numerous ways. In Antony and Cleopatra, it destroys Antony's reputation, and in this text we see that it destroys Gatsby's reputation as well as the relationship between Daisy and Gatsby. The fact that both these stories illustrate destructive love sheds light on how, as great as love can be, as it was discussed earlier, it is not always going to be this magnificent thing that can solve all your problems. This connection makes me consider that in our real world, love is not worth spending time on if all you are going to receive is a worse version of yourself who has lost most of the things that were once your pride. However, that cannot be completely true because self-growth was clearly facilitated by love in Antony and Cleopatra and Hellblade, Senua's sacrifice. So maybe, all these examples add up to show that love both provides opportunity for self-growth but also opportunity for personal destruction. It seems clear that in cases like The Great Gatsby and Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith, love ultimately is destructive and even drives Anakin Skywalker, the main character in Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith, to insanity. However, since diving deeper into The Great Gatsby, I have come to realize that there is another layer to the consequences of Gatsby's love for Daisy. There is a green light that sits on the end of Daisy's dock. Gatsby, who bought a mansion across the lake from Daisy, was always searching for that green light, and it perfectly represents his relationship with Daisy, as it is something Gatsby yearns for but is barely noticed by Daisy. However, the green light also represents the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. For Gatsby, this orgastic future is one spent loving and being loved by Daisy. This light that Gatsby chases is his love for Daisy, and it is because of this love he changes himself from a poor farmer boy to a wealthy Oxford man. This is the somewhat overlooked growth that was caused by love in this text. Gatsby did everything in his power and significantly bettered his life to even have a chance of being reunited with Daisy. But as we know, it is also this pursuit of love that leads to Gatsby losing everything he had built with Daisy, as well as his entire reputation when he dies all alone. This thought that love can spark tremendous growth in a person before leading them to lose everything they once had is further represented in Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith. For example, in the film, Anakin Skywalker is told by his wife, Padme, that she is pregnant with his child. Rather than filling Anakin with joy, this news causes Anakin to have horrible dreams of Padme dying in childbirth, which Anakin believes to be prophetic as he is a Jedi, meaning he is in touch with the force of life. Anakin's love for Padme causes an immense fear over losing her, and this fear is then exploited by the powerful Darth Sidious to turn Anakin to the dark side of the Force. I believe that by reaching out to Sidious for help protecting Padme, Anakin is demonstrating that he has grown as a result of his love for Padme. Before seeking the power to save Padme from Sidious, Anakin did ask the help of Jedi Master Yoda. Yoda, however, is of the belief that death is a natural part of life, and Anakin must train himself to let go of everything he fears to lose. George Lucas' aim with this quote was to show that Anakin is too attached to Padme and should let go of her. However, I believe that the Jedi are wrong for swearing against love and marriage because it limits the lengths to which people can grow. Therefore, this example shows Anakin is right to do whatever he can to save Padme because he will also be saving their love. Similar to Jay Gatsby, Anakin Skywalker is driven to do everything in his power for the person he loves. While Gatsby did it in pursuit of love, Anakin does it to protect his love. This distinction is important because having already spent time with his lover, Anakin has the added factor of fear of loss. Like Gatsby, Anakin seeks out to do whatever is necessary for love even if it seems morally wrong. For Gatsby this was illegally selling alcohol, and for Anakin this is obeying Darth Sidious, and whatever malicious orders he may have, so that he can learn the necessary powers to protect his love. This seemed like the right thing to do until Sidious was able to corrupt Anakin by turning the shift of his desire away from love but rather to unlimited power. This led to the destruction of Anakin Skywalker and everything he loved. In the case of Jay Gatsby, it was actually the fact that he loved Daisy when she did not truly love him that led to his destruction. Therefore, in our current society, it seems like love will always be a provider of some type of self-growth. However, there will be people who know how to turn this self-growth into something that will be destructive. But it is not fair to completely avoid love, as you will be robbing yourself of the opportunity to change and reach new heights as a person. The best position to take in this matter is to be cautious and aware of deeper desires or ulterior motives in your lover and the people around you. All these texts show how love can affect people and help them change, whether it be in a positive or negative manner. Moreover, something I have discovered through this report is that love can do both of these things simultaneously. Something that can still be debated is whether the overall effect of love is positive or negative. I don't believe that there is a right or wrong answer to this question, because love is such a complex and intricate thing that I doubt we will ever fully understand. In the example of Antony and Cleopatra, Antony firstly lost his reputation that he valued so highly, and as a consequence lost his entire kingdom. Then, in a final act of love, Antony grew as a person and did the noble thing in sacrificing himself to reunite with Cleopatra. This is partly contrasting my original thesis, which was that love can provide opportunity for self-growth, because while Antony does grow because of his love, he does also suffer a lot. In Hellblade, Senua's sacrifice, Senua has to let go of her love for Dillion because it was causing her to have intense psychotic episodes. But, it was her love for Dillion that drove her to let go. Once again, this shows part of my thesis, as it was love that allowed Senua to grow, but also love that made her descend into insanity. For Gatsby, a similar double-edged sword idea can be seen, as it was love that inspired him to go from rags to riches, but also love that caused him to die a lonely fool and criminal. Anakin Skywalker had a much more evident destruction that was caused by love, but undeniably also grew as a result of his immense love for Padme. I was originally considering which effect was more prominent in all of these texts, but now I realize that love is a double-edged sword, and this is shown quite clearly in these texts. The metaphor of a double-edged sword seems perfect, not only because it represents how love can be the thing that leads to victory, self-growth and happiness, and can also be what defeats you, destruction or descent into insanity, but also because it represents how difficult it can be to deal with love without finding the wrong end of the blade. All of these texts help me understand this and develop my view on love.